I'm Susan Blain. Welcome to the Dare to Be Vulnerable project. We share our mental health stories. And why do we do that? To help break silence, to bust stigma, to remove shame, and ultimately to save lives. We all have a mental health. That's something I think we need to think more about, like we think about our physical health, our gut health, our brain health. We all have a mental health. The question is, where are we on that scale? Optimum mental health, like really good, or poor mental health? Or are we somewhere in between? And there are things that we can do. We can be more open. We can dare to be vulnerable and talk and talk and talk. That's really the only way that we're going to bust the stigma and make change. The interesting thing about mental health is that it does not discriminate. It doesn't matter whether you're young, old, poor, rich, whatever cultural background you're from, however you identify sexually. It's a level playing field, and we're all in it together. It's a human thing. So this project is really about sharing stories from all walks of life. And today I've got a guest who I'm very excited to have here, a good friend. We've been friends for 30 years, and we talk openly about our mental health, and we're going to share today as well. My guest is Soley Soucie. What I like to say when I introduce guests is I like to give a little bit of their professional background, so maybe you can identify to something that they've done in their professional career. But we're also humans, and we connect that way as well. So for Soley, thank you for being here today. So Soley Soucie spent 15 plus 20 years maybe in corporate, working in corporate until she became an entrepreneur. And she is the owner and founder of the Treehouse Group. Check it out. She's also a mom. She's also a wife. She's also a daughter and a sister. And of course, a friend. So welcome, Soley Soucie. She's also someone who lives with CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
That's right. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, thank you for stepping up and using your voice, Soley.
Definitely.
It's so important, right?
So important.
Who do you think it would identify most with your mental health story?
Great question. I think anybody that is hustling for their worth, somebody who is kind of disconnected with their body, their emotional regulation, trying to get it all together. That's how I was before my diagnosis. I think anybody that's just trying to work and balance. I know balance is an overused term these days, but like trying to figure it out in a grounded way without losing yourself. I think anybody, like mental health can relate to anybody, but I would say
It's true.
I often relate to women that have to sit around boardroom tables that feel isolated and alone and have trouble using their voice.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of people like that. So people that are looking to find their story, their voice, and how it fits into their work.
I think a lot of people know what CPTSD is.
Yes, complex PTSD. So everybody knows post-traumatic stress. PTSD is very common amongst vets. The complex part is that I suffered trauma repeatedly before the age of 7. So 7 and under is really where it's defined. There's also you can suffer complex trauma later on in life if you have a series of traumatic events happen to you in a short period of time. But for me, it was during my childhood. But I wasn't diagnosed until 2018, so it was about 38, yeah.
Oh, okay. When did you first realize that you were struggling?
Right? Yeah. Such a good question, because my mother has bipolar, my brother has bipolar. I just didn't think I struggled with mental health. I thought it wasn't me. I can vividly remember when I realized that I needed help. I was working at the time for a public company, as you mentioned, and I was subpoenaed to represent our company in court. And being the fiduciary director, I went, not even thinking, and I'm an intellectual person, hindsight, obviously this was going to be a problem. I have lots of trauma around courtrooms, lawyers, because of my childhood and my past, but I did not connect the two.
So it was a trigger.
It was a huge trigger.
Wow.
So I was, it was 2 days of deliberation, and it was about 3:30. I had been questioned all day long, and I started to have my full trigger out of body. And I'd never experienced anything like that. I was like, what is happening here? This is not Soley, the corporate director that's totally got it together. And I remember at the break messaging colleagues to say, I need to just meet you for like a hug. Because I had lost, because I was just there with a lawyer, and like their opposition counsel, there was nobody there. So it was,
You hear about this too, eh? Suppressed. Like one of the gentlemen I work with this project talks about how he was sexually molested by his father when he was younger, and he compartmentalized it. And it wasn't until he was in his 40s and his father was near his face looking at something in the refrigerator, and it just came all flooding back to him and took him down a very dark rabbit hole.
Yes,
Kind of reminds me of what you're sharing right now. You know, I live with depression and anxiety, and I was depressed as a teenager. I had suicidal ideation in my 20s, and, you know, I didn't realize, like, because we hear a lot about that now. I think younger people recognize what's happening because mental health is talked about more. But back then, we didn't talk about it. Even postpartum depression I had, but I didn't know that's what it was.
right?
You know, what are some of the things that help you navigate through? Because this is really important, and I'm hoping to share that with people that are watching.
I think emotional regulation is really key with complex PTSD, and anybody that struggles with mental health is like, am I regulated? And I love you always are checking in. Where am I on the scale? And that's such an important thing. So I definitely have daily practices that I do in the morning to regulate myself, but I love the daily check-in and momentary check-in. Anytime I go on a call, before any call or any meeting, in person or virtually, I check in with myself, and I check in with everybody around the table. How are we doing? Because I think awareness of our emotions is really important.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time in talk therapy, and I've understood that dysregulation really is a unhealthy place to be, and it's an unhealthy place to make decisions in.
Yes, indeed. So you check in with yourself. You've had talk therapy.
therapy.
I know you've got something in your hand.
I was going to just say that. I have, I use crystals to help ground me. I know some of my friends think it's like hippy dippy, but
I don't.
It works for me, and I love it. So this is blue agate, and it's a crystal for communication, and so I use that. And I also spend a lot of times outdoors. So I say outdoor therapy.
Yes.
I think hugging a tree is, my friends laugh on walks. They might lose me to the trees. But I think there's something very grounding in that, and it's helped me immensely.
Oh, you know me. Every day I'm out there with dogs. Yeah. Dogs have been a lifeline for me.
Yes.
They're always living in the moment, and they bring me into nature. Totally. I'll be hiking after our talk today, you know.
Right.
It's where I'll be decompressing and tapping in. And I say to people I meet on my walk, it's the best part of my day.
Best part.
It's for my mental health. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I say that to strangers, they pause and they're like, you're right. This is good for my mental health.
It is.
And doing more of that, just, you know, connecting with nature.
Totally.
Being present is so, so important.
And having the compassion for yourself to do that. And I talk about compassion and forgiveness a lot in my rituals, because it's like to take the time for yourself. It's a compassionate gesture, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of when I was dysregulated, I didn't give myself that compassion.
If you were to share one thing.
Just one?
I know, just one kind of tip.
Connect with others. Connect with others face to face. I know we're in a world where we think we are connected all the time. And we are not. We are probably the most disconnected that I've ever seen in my career. And I think connection is where we start. And I think that would be the tip, is as you walk through your day, whether you're talking to your child or your colleague or anybody, connect with others.
Yeah, I love that. So as a mom,
yeah,
you know, as a mom, and I'm a mom, and what our mental health journeys teach us as individuals, but also teach our children.
Totally. Thank you for asking the question. My greatest teacher is Sophie, my daughter. And I remember vividly in therapy when my therapist said to me, "You do realize you will relive all your trauma through your children." Mm-hmm. Oh, boy.
Oh, my God. That's so true.
It was really powerful for me because I didn't realize that I had a lot of healing to do just in that statement on its own, right? Because it was
Yeah.
like, but parenting is challenging, and parenting through my CPTSD lens is really challenging because I grew up in an environment where, like, you know, like it was not great, and like we conformed because we had to. So when she doesn't conform, I'm always like, "What's going on? Why are you not conforming? This is a very pleasant place for you." But it's the disconnect. So I think our children really help teach us, and she has taught me a lot along my journey, and also the modeling of mental health, so important. She just went to her psychologist this week. She's 10, and we talk about the talking doctor and how
love
it's
it.
important at 10, right? Like
love it.
normalize it.
That's why we're making talking about mental health cool, my
That's
friend.
right. We said it all along.
It's awesome.
So true.
Thank you, Soleil. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you heard something today that inspires you to step up and dare to be vulnerable in your life. Share your mental health story. Share how you're feeling with someone else. That's the first step. Check out the work that we're doing at daretobevulnerable.com and more stories like this. Follow us, give us a like, share the stories with others because you just never know. Your story matters, Soleil's story matters, my story matters, and it has the power to save a life. So thanks so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.